Welcome to the Derek Loudermilk Show. This is episode 325 with Bonnie Darby and Kerry Keller, and we're going to learn all about past life readings. On today's episode, I interview the team of Bonnie Darby and Kerry Keller, and they work together, and Bonnie is considered the reporter and Kerry is the conductor. And Bonnie accesses through the Akashic Records people's past lives. And I had them access one of my past lives. And the reason that they do this is they look into people's past lives in order to provide wisdom for your current lifetime. And Bonnie has a whole book about this. It's called Soul Memories, Past Life Wisdom for Current Life Enlightenment. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how they work. You know, what is the metaphysics and the spirituality and the soul and all these pieces that make past life readings possible. And then we're also going to be using the past life reading that they did for me as an example for how to apply that information. You know, let's say you were such and such person back in the Middle Ages. You know, why is that relevant to your current life? Because there's, as the way that they see it, there's the continuity of our soul, and there's things that we learn in each lifetime that you can draw and access in this current lifetime. And, Kerry's been doing this for a long time. They met through the School of Metaphysics. Kerry has accessed over 15 of his own past lives. He's had 44 past life readings. And so they're very experienced. And it's really very exciting because there's some good studies, some validated research behind this. They're going to explain the difference between yourself and your brain, and they're going to talk about how we manifest things. And there's just a ton in this episode. And of course, you'll get to hear about one of my own past lives, and I'll give you the name of that person now. He was Philippe Horachon. And you'll hear all the exciting details about who was that person and how he's related to me and what I can be taking. There's actual guidance, what I should be doing now as a podcaster, as a coach, as a father in this lifetime. So very exciting. Without further ado, here are Bonnie Darby and Kerry Keller. Welcome to the podcast. We have Kerry Keller and Bonnie Darby. Great to have you guys on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
This is super exciting. We chatted once before, and I had you guys provided a reading for me. We're going to be talking about past lives and how you guys access these readings. I'd love to just start with how you guys got into this. You can take it in turns, whoever wants to go first.
Share your side, and then I'll fill in.
Okay, I got into this. I will be honest, I was not a believer necessarily of past lives. I thought it's as feasible as any other theory, but they didn't seem relevant to me. Just knowing that I had existed before was not relevant to me in my life there, or so it seemed. I'm an ordained spiritualist minister. So as guided, one day I think I went to an event at the school, as it says in my book, but I went to an event at the school and I met Kerry. And I ended up taking classes at the school that he teaches at, but I became fascinated with the fact when he said, well, at this certain point, you get a past life report. And I think I had gone and I had ordered one from him before then, and then I got another past life. And I realized the relevance to this life. And that's when it hooked me. It wasn't just maybe I was a potato farmer before I was in this incarnation or whatever. It was, I'm going to tell you about something you lived before that will help you now. And I thought, well, if it can help me now, I'm in.
And I'm curious what what that sort of first thing, the access point of, how it helped you.
One of my past lives that I received talks about that I was with a group. I'm trying to remember which country, and we would go into trance and then come out and have these profound learnings. And the learnings, but there was no written language, so we carved. So throughout history, you see carvings in stone, on caves and everything. So we carved so that the story would be preserved. And it said that I came back to write my inner knowings that I had learned in this lifetime and to share them with humanity. And I sat there and I thought, I always wanted to write, but I never knew what I had to say. I actually studied to be a spiritualist minister because a publisher at one time told me, by what authority do you speak? And I thought, ooh, now I need a spiritual authority to speak. So all of my adult life, when I moved in this direction, was so I could write. And here's this report from a total stranger that says, you need to be writing. And It just made sense.
That's amazing. Yeah. And so here you are, you have this book that I've just finished reading, Soul Memories. Yep. And that came out, did that come out this year, 2020?
It actually came out in August, I believe. Yes.
Okay.
What a time to launch a book.
Wonderful. And let's move over to Kerry.
Well, my story started about 18 years ago. I had my own business in St. Louis for almost 30 plus years, and had been married twice, and a lot of things went on in my life that I wasn't happy with. I had high expectations and high intentions and so forth, and those things weren't happening, and I didn't understand why. And I kind of found the School of Metaphysics by accident. I wasn't really looking for that, didn't know that had the answers. And when I first went to the classes and I received a past life report, the very first sentence said about me, "This one's here to prove himself." And I said, "Well, no kidding." And so it told me a lot of things. It told me that I was aware that there was a lot of things I didn't like. I didn't understand why I was going through them or what the value was of it. And I was looking to change. I didn't know how I wanted to change. And of course, if I share a little bit about the School of Metaphysics, it's been around for, well, this is its 47th year. We currently have 12 schools throughout the Midwest, and they're evening schools for adults. And from what I've been able to see over the years, it's entirely different from any other metaphysical school, whether it's at a university or it's a private or a nonprofit, because not only is the information taught, what the primary focus is how do you program or how do you prepare your mind to do the things we're supposed to be doing in life. How do you quiet the mind to begin with? How do you move your attention inward where we have a whole lot more wisdom and understanding? And then in this everyday life, how do you learn to cause or create yourself, your experiences, and your future? Because that's why we're here. And it took me a while through the classes to realize, well, that's not what we're taught when we're raised. You're born into a family, and you're taught very quickly, well, this is how this family works, and this is how our culture is, and this is how our religion is, and this is how our country works, and these are all the do's and the don'ts. And so at no time is hardly anyone taught about your skills you were born with, your talents, your gifts, and what do you do with them? How do you identify them, and how do you incorporate them into your life? And so that, plus the first report I had, got me very interested in to know that there is a place that you can go to actually read the energy and receive the lifetimes that you've been in, and that You're not just this body and a brain in this lifetime. You actually are consciousness, and we call that the self. And because the self is the part of you that observes everything, not only the physical, but what goes on in your mind, everything else, you're the observer, and you're the one that makes the decisions, the self. It's not the brain. You know, neuroscience has been trying to prove the brain was the origin of everything for 50 years, and now they're deciding, no, that's not the case, because consciousness is there before we're born and there after we're born, and so now they're scrambling to expand it. And so that's a new premise. We have to look at ourselves differently. We have to identify ourselves differently, because the way we're programmed and taught as children and on up is that you're sitting there in St. Louis, I'm in Indianapolis, she's in Muncie, about a half hour or an hour above me. You know, we're all separate. And the premise is, oh, well, as a spirit and a soul, we had to learn to be separate so we could understand what unity is. And so these reports teach you where your origination is from and why you're here, and what the soul had in mind when it entered your body. And so it goes on from there, and everybody's got different experiences, different pasts, and they're at different stage of their growth, and it's beyond fascinating. Totally.
Yeah, it really is. And, you know, my parents, back when I was growing up, were talking about a book called Many Lives, Many Masters. And I actually just went back and found a copy of that and read it. And, you know, that book in particular is talking about this woman had all these symptoms of anxiety and illness and stuff that she resolved by sort of working through her numerous past lives.
Sure.
And so I think, you know, maybe that sort of brought the awareness into pop culture for a lot of people of my parents' generation. But the types of past life readings you guys do happen, you know, has been going on for a long time, because there's the Edgar Cayce readings, which Bonnie, I think you stumbled across as a kid.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about how you guys work together and you know what the Edgar Cayce stories did for you?
Well, I'll start with the Edgar Cayce story. When I found the book, randomly, my mother loved books, and mother kept books. They were just shelves in our basement that had books, and you know, we don't try to explain why I picked this one, but I did, and I read it, and it fascinated me, because I think that was probably my first introduction to a spiritual world that wasn't traditional. So here's this man that could see, and he could give people thoughts to cure, and he could read their past lives. That was still a very devout person in his life. So that kind of showed me an aspect that you could still look at all this stuff and be who you are, you know, the core of who you are. So that carried me throughout. It just stuck with me through my life. Eventually, I started, as a lot of people do, with dream prophecy. From there, I read Cayce. Eventually, I did dream prophecy, but mostly you just live your life and you kind of put that thing back. The funny story is, as an adult and a grandparent, my aunt, who was in her 80s, realized, we got to talking, and she's about different things, and she said to me, "Do you ever read Edgar Cayce?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I found his book on Mom's bookshelf." And she laughed. She said, "Oh, I probably gave it to your mom. She always saves books." So I even found out how I got a hold of the book through this aunt, and we were able to talk about this. And so I led my life, and I went along, and then I think that instances and circumstances are drawn to you. And then I started meeting people that were spiritualists. And then through spiritualism, I started understanding universal law and natural law. And then my next step was turning up at the School of Metaphysics, which even helped me understand how it is to, what happens because I'm a medium, or how I can do these other things. So you can't go to one instance. It's kind of your life journey. It's how I evolve.
Can we quickly define what spiritualism and metaphysics are?
I'll let Kerry define metaphysics. I'll define spiritualism. Spiritualism is a religion that's based on the belief of the continuity of life. As a spiritualist medium, I communicate with people for a better understanding who have died. I actually use mediumship sometimes if I do paranormal investigations. But spiritualism is about getting the proof of the continuity of life. So to me, a lot of it is about proof. If I'm doing a reading, if I'm in tune and I'm doing a reading with somebody, images, for me, I'm a clairvoyant and a clairsentient, images develop. And I start perceiving these images, and I tell them, or I describe a person, or I describe an event. And people say, oh my gosh, that's so-and-so. I mean, they just know. And that's what spiritualism is about, is proving the continuity of life. We prove that our soul continues.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
In metaphysics, if we take the simple approach, everybody has a pretty good idea what physics is. We probably all took some sort of general science, general physics course in grade school or middle school, which explained physical laws like gravity and speed of light and things like that, and explained cause and effect in the physical. Well, metaphysics, meta means beyond the physical realm that we perceive ourselves in, beyond physical cause and effect, beyond physical five senses, beyond the brain. And so then you say, well, what's beyond that? Well, consciousness is, and you have a whole mind that's a part of consciousness, and the whole mind is bigger than the brain. The brain is just part of the body, but the brain is part of a whole mind. And so that's why meditation has become so strong in the last, 20, 25 years, because people are now realizing there's another part of themselves, which we're describing as the whole mind, higher levels or divisions of mind, that when we access them, there's wisdom there. There's understandings and truth. It's not the lies and the garbage that we have to deal with in this physical life that we have, and that we have access to it. So the metaphysics is what is beyond the physical. There are also laws, like there's physical laws, there's laws of consciousness. The one most people know is the law of attraction, but there's dozens more. The laws of cause and effect describes the energetic cause and effects, not just the physical. And the energetic cause and effects is how you think and your attitudes and your beliefs, and what do they cause, because each thought you have is a vibration and it has an influence. And we know higher-minded thoughts, attitudes, beliefs, and so forth vibrate at a much higher pitch and with a lot more strength. Low vibrations come from negativity, fear-based thoughts, doubt. They're like glue. And so when we get caught in those, they kind of disguise or cloud over or take precedence over the high-minded thoughts, and then we don't even see them, and we don't know their value, because we're stuck in the conditions we've created in this life instead of realizing there's a lot higher purposes and ways of living.
Yeah, and I would expect, there are so many things that can keep people in those conditions to prevent that from coming through.
That's the emotional part. Emotions come with every thought you have, and the emotions are the parts that we get attached to or addicted to or engrossed in, whichever word you want to use.
Okay. So we got spiritualism and metaphysics. And so as in the Casey readings, he had a conductor or a guide, and that's kind of how you guys operate as well. Could you talk a little bit about how you guys work as a team?
He did it a little. His conductor was more of an advisor, where Bonnie and I are more of a team. I play the role of the conductor, meaning I'm giving her directions all the time. I'm asking the questions. I'm telling her what kind of report she's going to do and who the report is on and so forth. In our preparation, we had to go through a little bit over a year of her getting used to me, because I'm basically providing a method of causing her to let go of her attachment to the ego and to the physical. She has to move her attention inward. So it's kind of a hypnosis practice. And so when she leaves the conscious mind, she moves her attention inward to what we call the subconscious mind. And she's completely safe. She's free. She is relaxed. But she's not attached to her physical identity. The only thing in the physical that she knows exists is my voice. She hears that voice. But if you came up and talked to her while she was in that trance, she wouldn't know you were there.
Oh, wow.
So on some level, she's vulnerable, which is why you have the conductor, because I'm not only there to communicate with her and talk to her, but I'm her protection. She has no protection other than me. And so that's why we're very careful when we do the reports in public. You know, the public have to sit back away from us, and they're not allowed to come right up there. Not that anything would happen, but you don't want to play that game, because it takes her a while to come back out as well. She doesn't have the response.
Sure. So you guys have done this in public, and so you always in the same physical location when you do these?
No, we can do that anywhere.
Okay. And so the listeners of the show, we've had a hypnotist on, so people are sort of familiar with hypnosis. And so, Bonnie, it sounds like you go into a trance state, and then you have access to, from reading your book, it sounds like the Akashic Records. Is that where you're going?
That is correct. Kerry guides me to the level of the subconscious mind where I can read the Akashic Records. And then I perceive, I think I try to lose, even in mediumship or in what Kerry and I do in reading the records, I've found people think that you just read. So how I really look at it is I perceive just like I would perceive in some ways, somewhat like I would perceive in mediumship, and what I perceive is what I share. It's not like I go someplace and I pick up a big book of records and I start really reading it.
So it's not like a giant tome that you're opening. And
yes.
And so, okay, I've heard of the Akashic Records. I've had someone read my Akashic Records. It wasn't for past life. It was just sort of general guidance. So what are the Akashic Records?
Okay, the easiest way to explain that is the flow of energy is giving and receiving. And so everything you think, everything you say, every action you take, you're expressing a vibration. You're basically creating those vibrations. And it's recorded in consciousness. If I showed you a mind triangle, that might help. I wonder if you would want me, I have a graphic. If I can share it on the screen, I could show you the levels of mind and where the Akashic Records are in relation to everything else that you know about, if that's something you would want to do.
Yeah, I think I've enabled screen sharing, and remember, some folks will be listening to this and some folks are watching.
All right, let me see if I can do that really quick. I'll blow this up on my screen so I can use it. Okay, you should be able to see a triangle.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a two-dimensional graphic that we call the whole mind. Down at the base of that triangle has a number 7 by it. That's the 7th level of mind. It's also what we call the conscious mind. And included in that conscious mind is certainly your brain, your memory, your thoughts, your ego. It's the part of us that knows physical life. If I flip up to the top part, you see a word that says light, and below that it says I am. So from a consciousness standpoint, this has nothing to do with religion or faith, although you'll find similarities. But from a consciousness standpoint of how consciousness functions, as far as mankind knows, whether you're a scientist or a religious leader or a doctor or a philosopher or whatever, most everybody believes in the Big Bang theory, that there was darkness and then there was this explosion and creation started. Well, if you read almost every holy book, it describes something similar about there being total darkness, a void, and then there was light, which we call, and the equivalent of light is awareness. So there was a sudden awareness of creation. And what we learn is that it's different than what we learned in school, that there's two levels of creation going on. There's physical creation, because I remember learning in 6th grade or 7th grade or whatever it was, that there was this explosion of light, and over millions of years that turned into gases. Some of them were cool gases, which turned into planets. Some of them remained hot, which became our suns throughout the universe. And then that planet, as it cooled, created an atmosphere, and then water filled up the oceans, and then suddenly over more millions of years there were animals in the sea, and eventually they came out of the sea. So we're being told about creation from a physical perspective.
Certainly, yep.
2 words under light tell you I am. Well, they were created at the same time of this explosion of light, and I am is each one of us. So each one of us in our existence, as far as mankind can understand, was created in the form of an I am, which is an energy being that has conscious awareness. It doesn't have a brain. It doesn't think like we do. It doesn't have physical abilities. It's awareness. But every living thing in the world has awareness. A plant has awareness. That's why you can talk to it and it grows better. That a car has awareness because you can talk to it when you're almost out of gas and somehow miraculously you get where you're going. So animals of every kind have awareness. Anything in nature has awareness. So it's part of the whole life cycle. It has a consciousness. So as far as the Akashic Records, if you look in the subconscious mind, there's between the 4th and the 5th level. And remember, the 7th level is the lowest level of vibration that exists, meaning it's much more slow and much more heavy. And every time you move upward from the 6th level to the 5th to the 4th to the 3rd, it becomes faster and lighter. So the highest form of you is in superconscious mind. That's the part of you that's the closest to the creator or God or whatever, Yahweh or whatever you would like to call it. And I'm still talking about consciousness. And so we have 7 levels of mind and 3 divisions of mind. And the Akashic Records are located in a vibratory pattern between the 4th and the 5th level of mind. So everything you think, say, and do is recorded in every lifetime. So it's kind of like going to a library for whoever you're looking for and whatever their past is or whatever's going on, and reading their energy field. So we just did a report for you. Anybody we do a report for, science now knows that your consciousness is held with your body in 7 layers. You have a layer within your body and 6 outer layers. goes everywhere with you. They're all energy levels, and your consciousness is in those levels. So when Bonnie and I are doing a report, in this case, your report, I am, through hypnosis, taking her out of the 7th level. She's giving herself permission to leave, but she has to let go of the ego because that restrains us.
Okay.
Emotions. So she has to be comfortable enough that she can go inward to the inner levels and move her attention between the 4th and 5th level of mind. So her body doesn't go there, it's her attention.
Right. So her attention starts in the physical world, level 7, then moves up, I'm seeing, through emotional consciousness and the lower astral spiritual level. So she's got to sort of move through those levels.
Yes.
Is it like as you go through them, you have different experiences and then you arrive at the Akashic Records?
Yes. Each level of mind has a totally different purpose for how it functions, and they're all related. So if we were to do a health analysis, we have to go to a different level of vibration. So we would have to take our attention to the 3rd level of mind, because that's where we all can access understandings of our vibrations that have to do with health.
Wow. So something going on in the 3rd level, and then that would be sort of manifesting as physical symptoms in the 7th level.
Yes. So not to diverse too far, but to give you some relationship of why all these levels work together. In a course of a day, you probably have 50 or 60,000 thoughts. The average person has 50 or 60,000 thoughts. And a small percentage of those are your desires, things you want, things you wish for, things you would like to have.
Okay.
And so what happens is the mind is designed to create whatever it is you ask for. It sounds like a fairy tale, but this is actually how it functions. When you have a thought that you desire to have a platform or a discussion with us, you call us up, you set up an appointment, you sent that thought to the 3rd level of subconscious mind. Now, you didn't know us originally, but you had curiosity in this subject, and so that thought form is planted in subconscious existence. It's a level of energy in the 3rd level of mind, meaning it's got its own level of vibration, and the purpose of the 3rd level of mind is to reach out everywhere that exists and find the possibilities to grant your wish.
That's super cool.
And so as you collect those possibilities, one of them, you knew Juliet, and Juliet knew Bonnie, and Juliet knows me. And so those connections came together. And so as that happened, all the other possibilities in the 3rd level were pushed aside, and that possibility came down, contracted down into the 4th level of mind, where it got better prepared to show up into real life. By the time the thought form gets to the 5th level, that's exactly what you're going to get. And so some of us that have studied to move our attention freely up into those levels can actually observe where your creation is. How is it doing? What's holding it up? What's getting in the way? And how soon or when it's coming. Is it coming in a minute? Is it coming in a week? Is it coming in a year? Is it never coming? Did it get lost? What happened? And so we know from this process and practicing it over and over again, we've learned how to make it work. Are we experts? No. But we know enough about it to know it works. So that's why the intuitive reports are also located at these energy levels, so you can access them. If I want to know my health and I have Bonnie with me and I have her go up in the 3rd level of mind, which we're working on, but we're not quite there. Once she's ready, she basically is connecting with my consciousness that I'm carrying in my body that vibrate at that level. And then she can tell me, or my body tells her, she's reading what's going on with my health. And I can ask questions about anything, and it can be told what it is.
Wow. So, I mean, two things that I'm getting is, it's fascinating that you can do that and get information about health, but also that it can be trained. So it sounds like, Bonnie, you're in the process of working on this as a skill to be able to access this. And I think, there's so many times, some of the clients that I work with, they want more charisma or confidence or something. And when you realize that many of these things can be trained or acquired as a skill, then it's like, oh, wow. It's not just this thing that some people have and some people don't. So I really love that accessibility of that.
As you saw in the report you received, if you have a client like that wants to develop more charisma, there are things we've learned in this life that are kind of holding that back from being your natural self. Fears, doubts, worries, being told no, whatever it is. Because we've learned all our self-limitations. And almost everybody knows, if you observe a child, the child is full of charisma, full of curiosity, full of love, full of trust. It's endless. So what happened to all that? Where did it go?
Yeah, I have two young kids, and we have a good friend that's coming to stay with us for Christmas. And my kid he said, "Can you come put a blanket on me?" He was just, and my friend was like, I would never even think to just ask somebody to do something like that for me. And it was just totally natural.
There's no fear. So most of our reports will tell you what you can have, sometimes how you can have it, because of all the limitations that we've developed. We often are telling people, you can do this, but you have to let go of this fear or this doubt or this anxiety or this stress or whatever it is.
This would be a great time just to bring up the report you guys did for me. So it's I may go back and read some of it for the listener, but the summary is, you found a previous past life where I was a French trapper in the 1600s living in Alaska. You even had his name, which let me see if I can. This is kind of cool. Philippe Horachon.
Yeah.
That's super cool. So theoretically, if there was any record, you could go and look and see, was this actually a real person? It sounds like you guys have done that in the past, where you've been able to see historical records of someone. And so you go and you, Bonnie shares what she's seeing, and you guys have a recording device, and you're recording it, and then you sort of parse it out afterwards. Is that how it works?
Right. We record it. It can be put on a CD, or in this case, what I did was transcribe it to send it to you so you can read it.
Yeah. First of all, thank you. It's fascinating.
Oh, they totally are. It's about us and parts of us that we don't know. So when we're reading about it, it's always intriguing.
Yeah. So thank you for that. A gift of an experience. It's really wonderful. And so in your book, Bonnie, and sort of the purpose is that it's not just interesting to know about past lives. It's a cool story, but there's parts of what your soul has learned that may be applicable to how we navigate this present lifetime.
Yes, and I think that's really the important part. And that's what intrigued me about even knowing my own past lives. I wasn't intrigued about a past life until I realized, oh, it could help me now. People need whatever they can get to guide them, or wherever they can perceive it through the lifetime they're in. It can be fun and it can be interesting to know, to have learnings, but if it doesn't help them, it's just going to be something they read and they just kind of laid aside, or, that was interesting. But to look at, and the other thing in this, if you look, you read a lot of the past lives that was in the book. You read the past life that's in here. As a student, I would transcribe these for various people. And as I transcribed them, I would be looking at this and I'd think, oh my God, I don't realize how much that little paragraph helped me. It wasn't even about me, but it helped me. So it's kind of almost a way, when you get to the summary and how it's going to help you in this life, it's a way for everybody that has access to reading any of them to see how they're going to help them in their own life. Because it's subconscious information. It's not what we just know every day or think about every day.
And I noticed the sort of recommendation was frequently similar. It was something like meditate more, have more stillness and quiet so you can access higher wisdom, or you know, these things. It seemed like a common guidance was like, here's what you should do. You should quiet your mind a little bit more.
Kerry and I were just talking about something about that today. Kerry, remember that conversation?
Yes.
Yes. Where we were talking, he said to me, now when I put this, your past life up and I store it or I do whatever I'm going to do to it, I would have to consciously go back and get it. It's not that I can't remember it. I choose not to think about it because I have my own life to live. And Kerry said, do you ever notice that a lot of the past life are about people that come out now, are about people in an existence where they have a lot of solitude that are coming out right now to people where we're in this digital, technical world that how much solitude do we really have? Or we could have, but we wouldn't allow ourselves. And I said, I just never really thought about it. And I guess it is true. And I think part of it is it has to do with the time we're in and like minds gathering to make a difference.
Well, I was thinking about, you know, there is a specific subset of the population that's seeking you out for these readings. And, you know, they're getting, so you have a small group and they're getting a single past life from you, a single reading. And, you know, so there's some bias there perhaps about what types of people are seeking this information.
So I would think that would have some bearing on that also. Like minds attract. I mean, a lot of this will work just like me being attracted one day. I'm looking for something to do and I end up going to an event at the School of Metaphysics and here I am. You know, like minds attract. It just happened to be the right time in my life to learn about this. I find sometimes if I had this, I mean, I've read about Edgar Cayce before, but I kept putting it back. It had to be at a time in my life when I was ready for it. Also. Yeah. To make so that I could understand and I could say, okay, I can apply my life to doing this now.
Yeah, what good timing, and here you are on the show.
Okay, Kerry.
I guess what I would add to that is not only are there more people on the planet that realize that humans have to change, but science has now come far enough to realize if we stay in the brain and all we know is the physicality of life, we miss out on what there really is. And so simultaneously with people starting to talk about mindfulness and meditation, the whole purpose of that is to quiet the mind so that you can have space between your thoughts. Because it's in that space between your thoughts that you can make a connection to the higher connections I showed you on the triangle. You can receive the wisdom. We cannot aggressively go into the inner mind and get what we want. It doesn't happen. We have to receive it. And that's a totally different way of communicating. In this physical life, probably 80% of what we do is aggressively going to do something. And yet it's supposed to be an even balance. And so the inner mind, we have to listen, which means you quiet your mind so there's nothing going on, which is hard for most people right now. But the more you do it, certainly you get peace of mind, you get tranquility, you get calmness. But then beyond that, you can get wisdom or receive wisdom about whatever it is you're curious to have about yourself. So your report suggested the same for you, because in the lifetime it described, you were in a time and a place that was cold, quiet, you had solitude, or you could go to town and engage with whoever, but you had a lot of solitude. So in that solitude, there's a lot less going on in the mind. So you have connection to your higher self. And that connection allows you to receive things that the brain can't touch and physical life can't touch. So it's suddenly saying, and it said, you woke up in that lifetime and said, whoa, there's not only a physical order here, there's a spiritual or a non-physical order that you were waking up to. And so the kind of the moral of the story for that whole report is, in this life, you're indoctrinated with physicality, from busyness, people, activity, social media, every other thing that can take our mind and totally distract it, so that we have a hard time figuring out what solitude is. And so then we're not living a balance of both levels of mind. We have a lot of people just stuck in the physical. And so the recommendation for you, similar to Bonnie, but for totally different reasons, was look at all you learned, and that you need to learn how to apply it in life. But very cleverly, the universe said, or the soul said, whoever said, we need to come to a time and a place where it's a lot harder to do that, so you can learn to purposely direct your mind to do what you want to do. In other words, you're the creator of your life. You're the creator of your mind. You're the directing intelligence. And we have to teach people that they're the directing intelligence, and then they're unlimited.
Wow. And just, I think people may have heard something like that. You can do anything you want. But to sort of know from this perspective that you're unlimited, wow, feels so powerful.
Yes.
So this past version of me, he was out in the woods trapping, and then he would come into town and do his fur trading. And let's see, I had a couple of notes here. But the past life said he told a lot of stories, and people really loved to listen to his stories. And that if I sort of took advantage of that and told stories in this lifetime, now here we are on a podcast, we're telling stories. Is it different than sort of what I'm doing? Is that what it's suggesting? Stories in some other form, or writing fiction, I believe, is suggested?
Think of people who write in parables. Obviously, most of the Bible is written in parables. Aesop's fables, Greek mythology. They all have a story, but they also have a message or a moral or a truth. And so when you move our attention and we learn from the inner levels of mind, we're learning truth. We're learning how creation takes place. We're learning how cause and effect really works without us telling lies or using our imagination erroneously. We find out what really happens in its purity. And so you apparently told stories in that past life because you had connection when you were out in the wilderness. You had connection, plus you had your experiences with nature and whatever that you told stories about. And so now it's saying, okay, now you're living in a time and a place where not very many people know about nature anymore. Not very many people have access to the quietness. So not very many people have access to truth and really what's going on. And you had a way, and it's suggesting you could also do the same thing in this lifetime by telling stories that speak about truth, that speak about morals, that speak about high-mindedness, that speak about even just learning. How does the process of learning take place?
When I was a young girl, we would have, and you still can get some of them now. I don't know that people read them as much, what we would call historical fiction.
Sure.
It would be about Betsy Ross or someone, and nobody really knew exactly what her day-to-day life was. So they created from her truth, her story, the truth of her life, they created a story. So young people realized that, oh my gosh, she was really a person, and she was interesting, and she was human, and things like that. So, when I first read this, that was what it reminded me of. You take the truth that you know, and the truth is there, but if you create a story around the truth, then somebody can catch it and think, oh, that was really pretty cool. I'm kind of like that. You do it to your children, I bet.
Well, you know what's really interesting?
You make up stories about the truth so that they'll understand it on their level.
I've spent the last, let's call it 2 months, I make up a story every night at bedtime, which sometimes it's really hard to do. But so we'll just set like, who are the characters in this story? And then I'll weave in like some of the experiences my kids have, or some things like that, or I'm trying to work in a moral or something, because a lot of cartoons do that as well. They like have to, somebody lost something, we have to all help them like find the thing again. And so I see that sort of style of storytelling in the cartoons my son watches, so I know he's already ready for that type of storytelling. But it was really interesting, that since I've just started doing this, making up stories.
Making up stories. And but you're making up stories so they'll understand truth.
So think about it this way. Your whole life is one story after another. Every experience is a story. And we're supposed to be able to have an experience and then turn around and say, okay, why did I have this experience? What is it telling me about me? Is it something I want to happen? Is it part of me creating and causing my future? Or is it something that came out of left field that I didn't really want to experience? And we learn from our experiences just like we learn in stories. So if you have wisdom and you can bear it into a story and 3 children hear it, you just expanded their conscious awareness of how they operate in life. But adults like stories too. So what we experience at the School of Metaphysics is people don't like to read anymore. They like to watch stories or listen to stories, and that's how they learn. The attention span has gotten so small with people that you have to engage them with stories. Then they'll learn from it. They don't want to read.
Yeah, I see that for sure. So, going back to this past version of myself, I was noticing this trapper person. He was in nature and he had sort of respect for all living things. And when I was a kid, my grandfather was super religious, and he was like, "You have to go to church. There's no substitute for actually being in the physical church with your congregation." And I said, well, nature is my church. I'm just going out there, and we got to, I was a 9-year-old telling him, no, this is my church. And he was telling me, you have to be in church. So we had a lot of conflict. But now seeing that was my church before, it totally makes sense. And also my love of the cold and snow and skiing and, being, I used to live in Montana for a little while, and it was perfect for me. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, it explains, all the lifetimes explain a lot.
It is interesting, and it's interesting that you can immediately find insight to who you are now from who you used to be. Because one of the things that I learned, or we learned, is, our soul contains our permanent memory. So it's there for us to access. But sometimes it just comes out as knowing, or we just accept it as, oh, this is just the way I am. We don't think about the fact that, oh, I could have been this way several times. It's a whole different way of looking at who you are and who you have been.
Yeah, I was really fascinated to learn that. So there's a study of these kids that remember their previous incarnation, and you can sort of, they can say the names of the family members, and you can actually, drive to the town and find the people, and they can verify it. So there's an element of data you can collect and determine whether it's accurate or not. But the facial recognition software can match. If there's a photo of who this person used to be and this kid, you can use facial recognition to match. So there's some element of our physical morphology that carries from lifetime to lifetime, it sounds like, which is just incredible to think about.
It goes back to proving the fact that we're unlimited.
Yes.
When you look at the whole of everything and you bring all these pieces together, it really is just a way of thinking, wow, I really am unlimited.
So I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question, but it's, because we're just talking about a single reading that you did, but theoretically, if you looked at a bunch of past lives, you could see elements from many of those showing up in your current life. Would that be accurate?
Kerry, how many past lives have you had? I think I've had maybe 5 or 6, I don't know, done for me.
I've had about 45 reports. 16 of those were past lives.
Oh, wow.
So you're exactly right. The oldest one I have is in 10,000 BC, when people were leaving Atlantis because it was sinking. And I was building adobes, which were energy vehicles that the beings could become recharged in, because the atmosphere wasn't where it was supposed to be. And I've had lives. I was a guard at the base of the pyramid in Egypt. I've been a shaman. I've been apparently a military leader a lot of times, a religious leader a lot of times. I don't have reports for all those, but I've been told those in various reports. And so when you look at your reports, you're exactly right. You can say, oh, I learned this, and that's still coming up. I'm still learning that. Or I have a pretty good handle on that, but I need to learn this. So you can see a progression, even though your lifetimes are hundreds and thousands of years apart sometimes. You can see a progression of the soul, because that's what this life is. It's like a classroom for the soul to come here to learn this in the present being and whatever it came to learn from. And the next life, it's another learning. And the next life, it's another learning. And so you can see the progression of yourself as a soul. So then you kind of learn to say, oh, how do I identify myself with a soul? I see this. It rings a bell. It makes sense. I think part of your report was asking about other lifetimes or other existences you've had, whether it was on Earth or someplace else. And Bonnie said, we're not reporting on that, but the sense that you are aware of it and know it means that you already have that knowing. You just need to become more conscious of it by learning to direct your mind to do that. So we all have the ability to go access other lifetimes. Some people can do it more easily than others. Some people think it's the farthest thing from them they could ever do. It's just the level of awareness and quietness that they're able to access.
And I was, where that question was coming from is, if Earth is, let's say, 4.5 billion years old and the universe is 13 billion years old, according to science, then there's a large chunk of time where there wasn't an Earth yet. But if what you're saying is, at the Big Bang, souls began when light began, there must have been time for incarnations, or maybe nobody was incarnating for a long time. But I was thinking, maybe there's plenty of our time to incarnate on other planets that are much older than Earth. And now there's, the population of Earth is growing, so there's much more opportunity to incarnate on Earth at this moment.
I'll share a question that I asked Bonnie a long time ago. I basically was asking her soul, because I wasn't asking a question about a particular lifetime. I said, what is it like to be between lifetimes? What is the soul doing?
Mm-hmm.
I made the mistake of asking, where are you? And she said, everywhere. And so I had to laugh at that. But I said, so help me understand how the soul functions. You have ability as a soul to split off and enter into a physical body here on the planet Earth. I said, are there other physical realms or energy realms that you split off to go to as well? And her answer was, yes, there is another physical reality that the soul travels to. She didn't name it. And then there are two energetic realities that the soul also splits off and goes to. So we're learning not just on Earth, we're learning from other existences as well. So you can imagine if we're doing that and other souls are doing that, and we're all at different levels of progression, there may be a lot of realities or realms of energetic existence that we have no clue about.
And this is concurrent, like your soul is doing all these things all at the same time?
To the best of our ability, we're going, yes. We think everything has a timeline. Well, it doesn't. We're the only ones that think that. So a lot of this apparently is going on in the present moment. That's just why we say that's where everything happens, in the present moment. So some of that's hard for us to understand. But at least if you take a soul and says, well, the soul splits itself up, and part of it goes here and part of it goes there. But if you're thinking about what your attention does, it's the same thing. Your attention can be here talking to us, and the phone in the next room can ring, and your attention can hear the phone in there, or somebody could be having a conversation in the next room, and your attention can leave this conversation and go listen to that one. Mm-hmm. So what's the difference? The soul can do the same thing. So attention is one of the most integral aspects of ourself we have, whether you're in the soul form or the physical form. Think about awareness. If you didn't have a single thought right now, you stopped all your thinking, you're still aware. So you're aware of where you are, you're aware of what's around you, you're aware of what's going on. You could be aware of what's going on in your car right now, or in your garage, or whatever. And so humans don't realize that they have the ability to use their attention to develop their awareness. And that causes you to think on a totally different level of what your existence is. When you die, you become disengaged from your physical consciousness, but you still have awareness, which when I was interviewing Bonnie in the soul state, she has awareness of what's going on, not only in the physical, but in the energetic world or the etheric world.
And do you have a sense of how frequently people are incarnating? Like, they quickly die and then come back as a new baby, or is there like a long gap in between where they're getting ready? Is there any data about that?
All I can give you is a personal opinion. I really can't give you a sense. But I think it's just like we have choice now and we have free will. So it would be something our soul would choose to do for whatever reason. I don't necessarily think that, I think I heard a theory one time that we shouldn't come back for every 100 years. I think that's a soul decision, really. Just basically your own soul decision.
I can add two things. When I first came to the school, I heard that souls on average today, in today's age that we're in, reincarnate every 7 to 15 years. But I've heard reports where a mother passes away and comes back as a child of the daughter that she had. So that happens. I've heard that a lot. And, I think, because we always have asked the questions, well, okay, 100 years ago, we didn't have 7 billion people on this planet. So where did all these souls come from, and where were they before?
Yes.
So that's a really big question to us who think physically. And so, but if you realize there's other place that we could have gone, the whole idea with that mind triangle and the I ams was when you were created, then the mind was created, because the mind was a vehicle that I ams needed to understand creation, the physical form of it. And so the I ams have been observing creation since the Big Bang Theory. So you've existed, according to what we understand in science, since the very beginning of creation, or the Big Bang Theory, or as any holy work would describe, the coming of light.
Yep.
That's billions of years. So what we have discussed and shared is those souls have been observing how creation unfolds until mankind came along and developed a brain with an imagination and then started entering the bodies.
Okay.
And then we became entrapped because we became engrossed in the physical. So there's some souls that have never been ingrained or incorporated into bodies. They observe us. Or some people call them guides or angels or whatever.
Okay.
So there's plenty of souls that don't enter the bodies.
So there was a part in the report you guys gave me that said you can do great things if you listen to the guides,
Yep.
or if you listen to higher guidance or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean like souls outside of my soul that are sort of helping me? Is that who I'm supposed to be listening to?
Also, your higher self.
Can I pull the mind triangle back up again?
Yep.
Let's do it.
Okay, so can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So if you're existing in the 7th level of mind, your brain's down here, and you're waking up to your higher awareness, that means you can move your attention into any one of those levels of mind and discover something about yourself. And so you begin to understand your existence as a whole functioning soul or existence. That's really the path that the soul is on. It wants to know how to be a creator. And we jokingly say, when you learn how creation works in totality, when you learn how to use every single level of mind, in other words, becoming completely conscious on all 7 levels, they award you your own universe. That's a joke, but that's what we do. So
theoretically, if you knew all those, then you could create universes.
Sure. So we have to assume there's beings out there that's a whole lot smarter and have progressed farther than we have. And so we know consciousness pervades throughout the universe and everywhere. So they're operating from the same level of consciousness than we happen to be living on Earth when we're here. And so it's a matter of, if I want to understand the wisdom that's in each of these levels of mind, then I have to move my attention into those levels of mind to understand the function of each level of mind. So when you meditation, what you receive in meditation comes from the 1st or 2nd level of mind. It comes from superconscious mind. It's the highest portion of your mind. If people are paying attention to their inner urge, it's that little message that comes in a wide variety of ways that says, do this, do this, do this, whatever it is that's going on in your life, and it says, go ahead and do that. That's the inner urge. It's usually causing us, wanting us to go investigate, be curious, and grow. That comes from the highest part of mind. Then you have subconscious mind, which is full of the wisdom that every single human being has learned over the eons of our existence. So if we can ask the question, the answer is in subconscious mind, which is why when we do ask a question, it goes to the 3rd level and the answer comes back out. Sometimes it doesn't come out the way we want because we don't always think very clearly. and we have a lot of fears and doubts. So if you want a pink Cadillac convertible and you order it and you're all excited until the guy calls you up to come pick it up, and yes, it's a pink Cadillac convertible, but it has a yellow and blue polka dot top, you're going, wait a minute, I didn't ask for that. Well, you probably didn't specify it. So we're learning how to be clear-minded and say, okay, I want to have the next 10 years, I want to have 20 very divine friends that I can tell anything to, that they can tell me, that I can be fully supportive of them and not have any fear, that we can create the most amazing things. Well, I have to have a really darn clear picture for that to happen and a good imagination. And I have to push away the doubts and the fears and the worries and the anxiety and anything else that I've digested over my lifetime to make it happen.
That was one of the things that came up in the report you sent me. It said, stop doubting, get rid of your fear. And that sort of surprised me. I believe that might be helpful, but I was trying to find out, what I'm afraid of or where my fear actually is. Because it's not something I'm sort of regularly aware of. Any thoughts about how do you drop fear that you don't really know you have?
Mm-hmm. But I if you read it in the book, I said I think I put it in the book. I don't know, but I told. Now, I did this as a senior citizen. I was thinking about, some of my experiences and things like that. And I'm driving down the highway, and all of a sudden I thought, oh my gosh, I incarnated to learn how to overcome fear. Because I always believed I had changed my mind and didn't want to incarnate. So when I got here, I was afraid. And I thought, that was one of the things I came to do. And I thought, now it all makes sense. So we accumulate a lot of things, or we accept a lot of things that on a physical level that people say to us that we don't even remember. So that sometimes is part of our fear. Sometimes fear is just what we chose to overcome in this lifetime. So it could be many things. I don't think anybody, I don't know. I don't know if anybody's I can't remember if anybody's asking a report. Kerry might. Do you know what I'm afraid of? I don't even know if that's possible, because I have found that most of the time that goes into telling you how to direct and live your life, and they won't do that for you.
Mm-hmm. But you also know my reports. I asked, and it says this one's afraid of success and this one's afraid of failure. And I go, well, I got it all covered then. It's like, holy cow. So think of it. When you're born, you're limitless. You haven't learned fear yet. You haven't learned doubt. So you don't worry. You don't have anxiety. You don't procrastinate. You're a free spirit. We see that in children. So every time a mom or a dad or somebody of authority says, no, you can't do that because Uncle Tom gets drunk, or you can't do that because the light turns red and you don't want to cross the street and get hurt, or you can't do this or you can't do that. Suddenly they're setting up conditions, and it's based on fear. Don't do that or you'll get hurt. In other words, we can't protect you. Or you have an experience where you expected these people would be loving and caring and giving, and they ignore you, or they do something you don't expect. And then because we can't reason until we're 8 or 9 years old, what do? We blame ourselves. Well, so-and-so didn't treat me right, and they screamed and yelled at me, so there must be something wrong with me. So now I have a fear that I'm broken or that I'm not good enough. And so what do? We create an identity, and now I'm a victim of my own thoughts, which are an illusion because they're not even true. And so that's part of the human experience, is how do we wake people up to realize this is all an illusion and we're creating it, and we can create it with our fears, or we can say, no, every experience is for a purpose. There's a learning in it, and teach people how to learn from them and not be afraid of them. Then we won't develop these complexes. We teach that if you have ADD or ADHD or PTSD or sadness or depression, that's not a disease. It's a mental condition. And if you learn how to focus your attention and concentrate, you can enable yourself to get better. And we've done that with people in schools. And so the mind has control over everything if we learn how to direct it.
Okay.
One of the things that I do about fear is you have an awareness. So you're facing something that you become uneasy about. Sit and think about, okay, am I really uneasy about this? Or reflect a little bit on your past, or is this coming up from something that I'm holding in my memory, in my conscious memory, that makes me afraid? And I really don't, and it doesn't serve me anymore. And gradually, as you do that, you'll find you'll become more aware of what is a fear or what is just something lingering that's holding you back from the past.
So I can answer your question directly as well, because we've kind of given you different ideas. But from a mind standpoint, the reason we want people to slow down and quiet their mind is because when you do get to that space and you have this fear or you have this emotion, we know fears and emotions are attached to a thought form. The first thing that happens is a thought form. If we're racing around in the world, it's pretty hard for us to find the thought form. Well, what took place? Why do I have this emotion? Yes, all our emotions moted out of the sixth level of mind. When the sixth level of mind that you saw in that mind triangle, when your thoughts come from the inner levels, an emotion is attached to it by subconscious mind, which emotes it out into this physical existence. So every thought you have has an emotion attached to it. Positive, negative, neutral, whatever it is. That tells us the quality of the thinking. So if you were beat up when you're a child, then you have some emotion attached to that experience and what happened. Sometimes the emotion is so strong, your reaction is so strong, you actually block out everything that happened. Mm-hmm. And the only way we can find out is to learn how to quiet the mind in the present life, present existence, to create greater awareness and perception to go see, well, what's the thoughts there? What actually happened? Because even though the child may have blamed themselves because they don't know how to reason, that really wasn't what happened. You know, the bully came from next door and beat me up because the dad never was home, and so the bully had to take his aggravation on the child doesn't know that.
Sure.
But the child still blames himself. And so fears, as you said, can come from a lot of things, but the only way we can access it is to quiet ourselves and then reflect. And that's when it comes to us.
Okay, so that comes back to quieting the mind again.
Yes.
I want to ask about, so a different type of reading that you guys mentioned is the past life crossing, and it sounds like you guys had that. You knew each other in a previous life. Could you talk about that?
Do you remember what the past life crossing was? I don't remember.
All I remember is you were my mom.
Yes, that was it.
I'm trying to remember where.
And you were my favorite among children, and you became a priest or something. Is that the one?
Yeah, something like that. It's been a while. The significance of the lifetime was the reason we were meeting again was you still had this protective nature about you. You had certain wisdom and support that I needed that you had to give me. And that's why we were drawn together in this lifetime, so that I could learn that level of support and compassion from her, and she could learn how to share it with an adult that wasn't her child. It's a different way of sharing. So yeah, probably more detailed than that, but that's what I remember.
Yeah, that's super cool. And if in the past life, right, you were born, one was born to the other, but now you're meeting sort of farther into the time frame of this lifetime, after a few decades. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, because
we each other in our wisdom years.
In our wisdom years.
Well, we've covered so many things. I think this feels like a good place to wrap up. I'd love to have each of you give an opportunity. If there's anything we haven't mentioned that you've been wanting to share, this is a great time to do that. And then we'll go into sharing, how people can find you guys.
Okay. Bonnie, you want to start or you want me to
start? I'm feeling complete. That's part of the medium in me. There is a point that I just know I'm complete. And I think, that I've shared what I could answer questions, but I am feeling very complete.
Wonderful.
I guess the only thing that I would share is probably why I'm still here studying this and teaching it and lecturing about it, doing these reports. As I mentioned, when I first found the School of Metaphysics, there was too many parts of my life that I was not happy with, and I didn't think I had any kind of control, and that didn't make any sense to me. And I think lots of people like that. Life isn't going exactly the way you predicted. And there's things you want to do that you don't know how to get it done. And so I think what I would share is we certainly are much more expansive than we think. And part of our problem is where our attention goes. If we race through our life on autopilot, doing almost everything on habit, which is, they say about 85% of what we do is habitual, 15% is fresh. That's not very much.
Yeah.
And so if I'm operating on a habit, which means I'm still operating from things I did in the past, which, especially if I was a child, I'm probably operating on thoughts, attitudes, beliefs that aren't even true. That's the case for most people. So when you slow down and do your best to become in the present moment, as hard as that seems, then you start seeing yourself, your perception changes and your awareness changes. And you start understanding energetically how life unfolds, and you start learning that the way you think can either be productive or not productive. And so when you start observing yourself, because you're practicing concentration and undivided attention, you suddenly begin to observe the mind and realize, oh, that's a thought that came from my memory, and that's a thought that came from my ego, and that's a new thought that came from subconscious mind. That's fresh and true. And this is a fear thought, and this is imagination. Well, if you're racing through the day, you're not doing that. You don't even look to see where your thoughts came from. So you're creating a life off of autopilot, and then you wonder why it's not working. So then if you add any doubts and fears and worries to it, your life is a mess. And I don't mean that in an ugly way. It's just you're not doing what you'd really like to see happening. And plenty of people out there are going, well, why is this happening? I don't want this. And all we have to do is look out in the world today with COVID and racial tensions and politics and economics and everything else. There's too many people that are just in reaction mode because they don't like what's going on and they don't know what the heck to do about it.
Sure.
And so the reports, as we've been sharing today, are telling us the truth about who we are and what we are capable of doing if we change the way we think. So that's why we've been teaching. That's why we do these reports, because there's another whole side of us that most people don't understand, and we want them to see that they are whole and they can create whatever they want. They just have to learn how to think differently and process it. And so that kind of ties a ribbon around a lot of the questions we had here today. It's extensive. You can talk about any subject like you want. But, it's when we do reports like yours, it gives you a place to stand on and say, well, okay, what about this? And what about that? And why is this? Why? And it just starts waking you up. And now people need to realize that awareness isn't just this fuzzy word. It's that you can expand your awareness to understand yourself 10 times, 100 times more than you do now. And of course, our imagination doesn't know how to imagine that until you experience it. So that's why we're talking about it. So people can say, oh, now I'm curious.
Yeah, what wonderful. And just thank you for sharing, the why you're doing this. And I just want to acknowledge you both for doing this work. And you're helping people watching the show, listening, and me, of course, and so many other people through your book and your teaching. So thank you so much. Please keep going. Yeah, it's been great to have you guys today. Where's the best place for people to learn more about you and find you online?
Right now, I would say I have a landing page that advertises my book. I don't know if I can make you see this or not on this, but it does advertise the book. And it's at spiritualmediumships.com.
Could you say that one more time?
Spiritualmediumships.com.
Okay, wonderful.
So
and the book is
in that website, there is some information about the reports that we do, and that anybody can contact us on my email, which is kerrypkeller@gmail.com. And we can do reports for anybody that would like to have one. And similar to what we did for you, is we do past lives profiles and we do past life crossings, or we call them soul reports. And eventually we'll be able to do health analysis, but we're not quite there yet.
Fantastic. So thank you again for your time. Thanks for coming on the show. It's been great chatting with you today.
All right. So let us know when you put this up. We would love to see how it works.
We would love to look at it.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you a lot.